Hey guys, tonight we're heading back in time, way back, to Edo-period Japan, where your average Tuesday involved more hauling, scrubbing, and indigo-stained fingers than you'd ever bargained for. You're not a samurai, not a noble, and certainly not a merchant. Nope, tonight, you're just a hard-working townsfolk, one of the many who keep the streets clean, the firewood chopped, and most importantly, the laundry immaculate. Your day begins in that shadowy hour before dawn, when the lanterns have burned out but the roosters are just getting their throats cleared. You're already up, wrapped in yesterday's work kimono, rubbing sleep from your eyes and muttering about your back as you shuffle outside into the quiet grey of early morning. There's a bite in the air, and the stone under your sandals is slick with dew. Water is everything today, and you know the neighborhood well enough to beat a few slowpokes to the shared well down the lane. That's right, no plumbing, no tap, and definitely no fancy soap suds. Just a deep, dark well, a creaky pulley system, and a splintery bucket that smells faintly of algae and ambition. You lower it down, muscles creaking along with the rope, and brace yourself as the bucket plunges with a thunk into cold water. You haul it back up, arms straining with each crank, and slosh your way home before your arms decide to unionize. The neighborhood's already coming alive. Smoke curls lazily from chimney holes. Somewhere, a child is already crying about miso soup that's too hot. And across the narrow street, your neighbor Okinu-san nods to you with a knowing look. Yes, she's doing laundry today too, and yes, she's judging your water hauling posture. She always is. Inside your home, the workspace is tight. Tatami mats are rolled up out of the way, and wooden tubs line the floor like squat sentinels. You pour the water into your largest tub, watching steam rise as you mix it with what little boiled water you'd started earlier over last night's coals. Not hot enough. Too bad. It'll do. Now comes the moment you hate most, lifting the laundry from the waiting basket. It's heavier than it looks, like all baskets filled with familial expectations and your uncle's extra thick festival yukata. You mutter something under your breath as you pull out each item. A toddler's shirt stained with plum paste, a sleeve with mysterious footprints on it, rat? Child? Spirit? And that one pair of trousers that always smells faintly like pickled daikon no matter what you do. Historically speaking, Edo-period laundry wasn't a daily chore. It was often a weekly or even bi-weekly event, depending on the season and family size. You didn't have a wardrobe bursting with outfits. Most commoners had maybe 3 full changes of clothing, and one of those was usually reserved for special occasions, like New Year's or running into your ex at the tofu stall. As you sort the laundry, you mentally prioritize. Silk garments are to be handled delicately, if at all. Cotton can take the heat. The heavily dyed indigo pieces. Those bleed like samurai in a badly written kabuki play, so you keep them separate. Historians still argue whether most households use consistent dye separation practices or just learn it by losing a few good towels to fate. Outside, the neighborhood dogs are barking. Not at anything special, probably just a particularly menacing crow, but it still adds a certain morning flavor to your task. You've got your sleeves rolled up, hair tied back with a faded cloth scrap, and your knees firmly planted on a worn mat that's seen more wash days than birthdays. As the light grows stronger, the city hums louder. Wooden shutters creak open, vendors begin setting up their stalls, and the smell of rice porridge drifts temptingly from a nearby tea house. You briefly consider abandoning laundry for breakfast, but the memory of your mother's ghost scolding you for laziness, real or imagined, is enough to keep your hands moving. You work efficiently, muscle memory guiding each movement, the gentle agitating, the rinsing, the checking for secret messages sewn into cuffs, a habit left over from your brief infatuation with ninja dramas. There's something satisfying about watching dirty water swirl away into a trough, carrying with it a week's worth of grime, missteps, and fermented bean sauce. By the time the sun breaks fully over the tiled rooftops, you're halfway through the load and starting to feel the ache in your shoulders. You pause, stretch your back, and look out the window. A dragonfly buzzes lazily past. Okinu-san is now yelling at her youngest for dunking a sandal into the bleach bucket. You feel a little better. Your mind drifts to laundry in the bigger city. In Edo proper, wealthier families might have had servants to do this work, or at least hired hands who specialized in washing silks with uncanny gentleness. Some towns even had designated laundry workers, often women, who knew just how much ash to mix with rice water for that perfect low-sud scrub. You don't have that luxury. You have a wooden paddle, a boiling tub, and the grim determination of someone who knows her in-laws will absolutely notice if their white robes come back grey. And now, the sun is up. Your arms are soaked, your feet are cold, and your spirits are, well, not high, but certainly awake. Laundry has officially begun. Outside, the sun glints off the tile roofs like tiny knives, and you squint through the steam rising from your rinsing tub. Your sleeves are damp, your knees ache, and a thin line of soap suds has made a quiet escape down your forearm, where it clings rebelliously to your elbow. But there's no time for theatrics. Today's laundry must be beaten, rinsed, wrung, and hung before the midday heat turns the yard into a steam room for insects and existential dread. You drag your heavier garments to the beating stone, a flat slab worn smooth by decades of rhythmic whacking. This is where the magic, and the pain, happens. You grab a wooden bat, shaped a bit like a rice paddle but angrier, and begin the slap dance. The fabric makes a satisfying thwack as it hits the stone, sending tiny droplets of grimy water into the air and startling a passing cat. You hope it wasn't Okinu-san's cat. Again. The practice of cloth beating, or tataki, was standard in Edo households. It wasn't just for cleaning, it helped soften the fibers of cotton garments, making them more comfortable for daily wear. You wonder briefly how loud this all must have sounded in unison across the city. Was Edo just one giant, synchronized slap orchestra every wash day? Historians still argue whether this noise pollution ever sparked complaints from nearby temple monks or just blended into the general cacophony of rooster fights and street hawkers. You lift the paddle, smack again, and adjust your grip. There's a rhythm to it, almost meditative. Left, right, flip, slap. It's like a war dance, if the war were against grass stains and fish sauce. As you work, your hands begin to prickle. The homemade lye soap, a pungent concoction of wood ash, rice water, and occasional citrus peel, is doing its job a little too well. Your grandmother used to say, if it doesn't sting a bit, it won't clean a thing. She also believed that cucumbers cure heartbreak and that foxes can read minds, so you take that advice with a pinch of pickled radish. You toss a finished yukata over your shoulder and move on to the next. The cloth is heavier now, weighed down by suds and sorrow. This one belonged to your father, and it always takes longer, not because of the size, but because of the memories stitched into every fraying seam. He wore it the day he fell into the koi pond. Twice. When you pause for water, your hands tremble a little. Not from emotion, but from sheer effort. You sip from a gourd and wipe sweat from your brow with a piece of cloth that was probably once part of a sleeve. No one wastes cloth in this city. Even the tiniest scraps become wash rags, doll clothes, or emergency bandages when someone inevitably steps on a bamboo splinter. Around mid-morning, the tenyugai, light cotton hand towels, go into the rinse tub. These are easier, less back-breaking, and often decorated with dyed patterns. The indigo dye, so popular in the Edo period, has a tendency to fade or transfer if washed improperly. Indigo's antibacterial properties were appreciated, but washing it felt like handling a rebellious teenager. Historians still argue whether dyeing houses gave proper instructions to families or simply let trial and error, mostly error, take its course. You wring each towel out carefully, twisting in opposite directions with both hands. It's a bit like preparing a very angry eel for a wrestling match. Your forearms scream in protest, but there's no mercy in laundry. Only water, time, and the deep shame of mildew if you mess up. Now for the furoshiki, those multi-purpose wrapping cloths used for carrying lunch, wrapping gifts, or hiding secret love letters. These are delicate, patterned, and sometimes have hidden stitches from last season's repairs. As you scrub one, your fingers trace a rough patch. That's where your cousin stitched up a tear after trying to carry 3 bottles of sake in one bundle. Rookie mistake. A sudden breeze wafts in from the alleyway, bringing with it the scent of grilled mackerel and the distant cry of a vegetable vendor yelling something about eggplants. You take a second to look out your window. A group of children runs past, one of them wearing a shirt you just know their mother is going to curse over later tonight. Mud, ink, and a suspicious trail of what might be tofu. You whisper a quiet prayer for her wash day tomorrow. The drying lines await. You step outside and scan the thin wooden poles stretched between 2 support beams. They're already sun-warmed and slightly sagging under the weight of a neighbor's ambitious laundry pile. You thread yours between theirs, a careful dance of clothespins, balance, and grumbling about space. One misplaced step and half your wash ends up in the dirt, or worse, in the fish pond. Again. There's an art to hanging laundry in the Edo sun. Whites go first, to catch the brightest light. Darker clothes follow, tucked under the eaves to avoid fading. Under things. Strategically hidden behind a row of hand towels, because even in a city of thousands, some modesties remain sacred. You hook your fingers through each sleeve to shake out the creases before pinning it up. It flaps proudly in the breeze, like a very local, very damp flag of personal triumph. And just when you think you've earned a break, your youngest sibling waddles out with a single sock. One sock. And it's filthy. You stare at it, and then at them, and for a moment, consider the merits of moving to a mountain hut alone with nothing but 3 kimono and a rice pot. But instead, you sigh, rinse the sock, beat it with righteous vengeance, and hang it like a lonely little shame flag next to the family yukata. By now, the sun is near its peak. Your arms are jelly, your back is a question mark, and your stomach is growling like a tanuki in a thunderstorm. You lean against the porch rail, squinting up at the sky. Blue. Clear. Perfect drying weather. The clothes sway gently above you, like tired dancers after a long rehearsal. You close your eyes. You can almost hear them whispering, "Nice job." Then, the clouds begin to gather. You hear it before you see it, a faint pop-pop-pop in the distance, like someone rhythmically flicking a wooden fan. The clouds gather fast, those quick, fluffy betrayals puffing their cheeks over the city like smug little pranksters. You look up at your laundry, swaying confidently in the breeze, utterly unaware of its impending doom. A neighbor yells something from across the alley. You can't quite catch it, but the universal panic in her tone needs no translation. It's going to rain. In a flurry of wet footsteps and muttered curses, you dash back out, arms flailing like a desperate stork. The clothes come down in reverse order: socks, towels, yukata. You're fast, but not fast enough. One furoshiki catches the first fat drop of rain right on its neatly rinsed edge. Of course. You scramble back inside, your arms heaped with damp cotton and half-pinned regrets. You lay everything on the bamboo floor slats, spacing them out like crime scene evidence. The room smells like warm fabric and a little bit of panic. During the Edo period, this weather whiplash was a known enemy of the laundress. Japan's humid, monsoon-touched climate meant that even on sunny days, you kept one eye on the horizon and the other on your drying line. The locals had an uncanny sixth sense for storms, often relying on subtle cues, like the way sparrows changed their chirping or how your knees started aching 3 hours in advance. Historians still argue whether these folk observations were scientifically accurate or just very confident superstition. You light a stick of incense, partly to dry the air and partly to keep yourself from screaming. Smoke curls upward lazily, completely unbothered by the chaos around it. You try to channel that energy. You are the incense stick. You are calm. You are not plotting to kick the weather kami squarely in the clouds. The laundry's damp again, but not soaked, so you decide to air it indoors. You set up a series of makeshift lines across the rafters and on the backs of chairs. It looks like a cloth ghost convention. The room darkens as the clouds crowd the sky, and for a moment, you feel like you've entered a new realm. Part shrine, part drying rack, all chaos. While you wait for nature to sort itself out, you crouch down and inspect a stubborn stain on your eldest brother's Juban underrobe. It's a deep rust color, possibly miso, possibly ink, possibly blood from when he tried to shave his head in the dark. You scrub it with a bit of pickled plum juice, a traditional remedy for stains that also makes your laundry smell like your aunt's bento box. You're not mad about it. Back then, people relied heavily on natural stain removers. Rice bran, persimmon juice, even powdered seashells were common tools in the stain-fighting arsenal. And unlike today's chemical concoctions, they didn't peel off your fingerprints or poison 3 generations of beetles. You pause for tea, a lukewarm cup of roasted barley brew, earthy and bitter. It tastes like toast with an identity crisis. As you sip, you glance around the room at the flapping garments and reflect on the hidden choreography behind every household's laundry day. No one saw it, but everyone lived it. The early wake-up calls, the soap burns, the frantic dash to collect clothes before the sky threw a tantrum. Edo life was many things, crowded, vibrant, sometimes unbearably stinky, but it was never lazy. Even laundry required strategy, strength, and stubbornness in equal measure. You flip a towel that's drying unevenly and sigh. Time to reheat the iron. Or rather, the closest thing to one. In Edo, Japan, the most common household iron was the hagama, a metal tool shaped like a squat teapot that you filled with hot coals. A handle wrapped in cloth let you press it down onto garments without burning yourself. Much. Unless your younger cousin tampered with the handle again. You eye the iron suspiciously. You set it near the hearth, feeding it a few embers and waiting until it reaches the right temperature. There's no thermometer, no light that turns green, just the subtle art of feel. You hover your hand nearby, close enough to judge the heat, not close enough to lose a knuckle. Perfect. You pull out a katabira, a summer robe, lightweight and prone to wrinkling, and begin the delicate smoothing process. The hot iron glides over the cotton, releasing little puffs of leftover dampness and memories. The scent of sun-warmed fabric mingles with that of charcoal and old incense, and for a moment, you feel oddly proud. Ironing back then wasn't just about presentation. It was about preservation. Well-pressed garments lasted longer, resisted mildew, and didn't make you look like you'd been rolled through a futon. Plus, in Edo society, appearance mattered. A wrinkled sleeve could say more about your household's discipline than a poorly cooked meal. Historians still argue whether this obsession with neatness stemmed from samurai-era martial order or just from everyone being deeply afraid of Aunt Oyuki's disapproving stare. You finish the robe and hang it by the window, hoping the light will catch its fresh folds just right. A breeze filters in, cooler now. The storm's past. You step outside to check the sky. The clouds have scattered, retreating like guilty children who know they've done wrong. Sunlight pushes back in patches, and one thin beam catches the wooden post where you always hang the bedding. Good enough. You bring the rest of the wash out again. This time, the drying feels like redemption. A second chance. The clothes ripple like they're laughing at you. You thought we were safe? Ha! You laugh back. Because really, what else can you do? Just as you clip the final towel to the line, your stomach grumbles again. Loudly. You ignore it. There's one last chore before your break. Bedding. You head back inside and roll up the straw mat you sleep on. It smells faintly of cedar and dreams. The cotton futon on top is bulky, heavy, and probably older than you. It gets cleaned once a season. Twice, if someone spilled soup on it, again. Today, it's airing time. Not a full wash, but a sun treatment to kill off whatever bugs or ghosts are lingering in its folds. You heft it over your shoulder and drag it outside, nearly knocking over your little sibling again. The futon flops onto the porch rail like a lazy beast, soaking in the sun. You give it a good bonk with the futon paddle, a wide, flat stick used to beat out dust and remind the bedding who's boss. It sends a cloud of old rice crumbs and forgotten hair ties into the air. Your neighbor sees and nods approvingly. Nothing bonds a community like shared futon aggression. A warm breeze lifts the corner of the futon like it's trying to escape. You nudge it back into place with the paddle, then give it another solid thwack. There's something deeply satisfying about smacking your bedding in broad daylight. You're not sure if it's the thud of compressed dust finally giving up or the primal joy of whacking something without consequence. But it's not just therapeutic. In Edo-period Japan, this was essential futon care. Without the modern luxuries of vacuum cleaners, fabric refreshers, or even consistent laundry soap, sunning and beating the futon was the only way to keep it from becoming a writhing buffet for mites, fleas, and whatever tiny horrors called rice husks home. Historians still argue whether this method was more for hygiene or simply ritualized venting. You pause for a second, squinting at the pattern of shadows dancing on the ground. It's beautiful, like cloth-cut stencils swaying over packed earth. You try to memorize it, but the image slips away the moment you blink. Back inside, your little sibling is trying to turn your fresh towel into a cape. You give them a look. They grin and flee, trailing damp cotton in their wake. You make a mental note to re-wash that towel later, once it's stopped pretending to be a superhero. Speaking of towels, your neighbor drops by, offering a small bundle wrapped in indigo-dyed cloth. She's traded pickled radish for help with her own laundry, and you take it without hesitation. Bartering services is common, especially when everyone's trying to avoid spending hard-earned coins on things like help, soap, or your dignity after failed rain prediction. The bundle's heavier than it looks. Inside are 2 tenugai hand towels, a child's kimono, and, oh no, a silk hari jacket. Your eyebrows twitch. Silk is a menace. Beautiful, slippery, impossible. Washing it is an art form mixed with black magic. You sigh and lay it out on the bamboo mat like you're prepping a surgery. Edo folk didn't usually wash silk at home. If you had the coin, you sent it to a professional kanshia who specialized in delicate cloth maintenance. But clearly, your neighbor is either feeling brave or quietly testing your skill level. You grab your tools, a wooden basin, lukewarm well water, and a solution made from grated soaproot, mukuroshi, mixed with rice water. The silk soaks gently, shimmering like fish scales in the sun. You barely touch it, just a soft squeeze and swirl, no twisting, no wringing. Silk gets cranky if you manhandle it, and cranky silk wrinkles like your uncle's forehead during tax season. You lift it out, letting the water drip in silence, then roll it in a dry cloth to wick away the rest. You lay it flat, smoothing it gently like you're pacifying a fussy cat. Every movement slow, deliberate. The kind of motion that makes you forget about time for a moment. You remember your mother teaching you this method when you were barely tall enough to peek into the basin. She always said, treat silk like it's nobility, it'll betray you the moment you get rough. Honestly, that could describe a few people you know, too. While the jacket dries, you turn to your own family's pile, this time it's socks. Or rather, tabi, those split-toe socks that make your feet look like they're perpetually trying to do the Vulcan salute. Cleaning tabi is its own nightmare. Dust, toe sweat, and streets that double as livestock highways mean they're rarely white for long. You grab a stiff-bristled brush and some ash soap paste, then start scrubbing like you're exorcising demons. The grime foams, your fingers ache, and you can't help but wonder why someone hasn't invented disposable tabi yet. Oh wait, because this is the Edo period, where wastefulness is basically a moral crime. Laundry water doesn't just go down the drain here. It gets reused, for dishes, for mopping, sometimes even for soaking vegetables. You carry your greyish rinse water outside and pour it into the garden, careful not to splash your feet. The cabbage patch gets a free snack. You get slightly cleaner socks. Everyone wins. But let's talk about water. In Edo, water access was a daily concern. You either fetched it from the public well, shared among your Nagaya row house neighbors, or from the river, if you were feeling strong and didn't mind the fishy aftertaste. The city even had an underground wooden aqueduct system, a marvel of pre-industrial engineering that let fresh spring water flow from the hills into people's homes, or at least into public cisterns. Historians still argue whether this system was as efficient as the documents claim or just a really clever way to avoid arguing over who broke the bucket again. You hear a splash. Your sibling has upended the rinse bucket again, and your newly cleaned tabi have returned to their natural state. Doomed. You close your eyes. Count to 5. Remember the incense. As you re-wash the socks for the 3rd time, your thoughts wander. Laundry is weirdly meditative when it's not actively trying to destroy your sanity. You can't rush it, can't automate it, and definitely can't ignore it. Not unless you enjoy the smell of fermented armpit. There's something humbling about it. 2. You could be a merchant, a craftsman, even a samurai's wife. Everyone deals with dirty clothes. Everyone has a rain ruined my bedding story. Everyone has battled the beast that is collar grime. It's a great equalizer, really. Or at least a great humbler. The breeze outside changes again, this time warmer, more forgiving. The clouds have scattered into a lazy watercolor sky, and the scent of sun-dried cotton is finally overtaking the musty dampness from earlier. You step out to check the futon. It's dry and fluffy, and you might actually sleep like a human tonight. You clap the dust out of your hands, squint at the last corner of sky where the sun is starting to dip behind the rooftops, and stretch. Your shoulders crack. Your back protests. Your feet are wet again. But it's done, for now. You gather your laundry like trophies from a war and bring them in, folding them slowly as the room fills with the soft light of evening. You pause over the silk jacket, now dry, still smug. It looks almost untouched by the ordeal. You won't admit it aloud, but you're a little impressed. And just as you tuck it neatly into the bundle to return, your sibling gallops past, this time with a pair of your underwear tied around their head. You don't chase them. You're too tired. Your back creaks like an old floorboard as you straighten up, arms laden with crisp, sun-warmed clothes. The futon's been hauled back in. The silk hari survived your care. Even the rebellious *tabi socks have returned from their dirt-flirting ways, though you're not convinced they won't betray you again tomorrow. You sit on the edge of the tatami, laundry basket beside you, as the low sun filters through the paper screens, turning the whole room the color of warm miso. Now comes the part that requires the real skill. Folding and storing. No random pile stuffing here. In Edo, Japan, storage space is precious, and folded garments are treated with the same reverence as sacred scrolls. You take a yukata, a simple cotton robe, and begin the familiar sequence. Fold in the arms, flatten the collar, smooth the seams with a hand that knows its path without looking. A badly folded kimono means wrinkles, which means re-ironing with heated tongs, hinoshi, which means pain and possible burns. So, folding well is also self-preservation. Across town, professional kimono shops offer not just garments for purchase or rental, but precise folding and seasonal storage services, especially for expensive pieces like layered silks and ceremonial wear. You can't afford that. You asterisk that service, just unpaid. You move on to your father's outerwear. He's a carpenter, and his Samu work clothes smell faintly of cedar and sweat. There's a kind of affection in the scent. Not that you'd say that out loud. You fold it slowly, pausing only to flick off a wood shaving tucked in the sleeve like a secret. Your mind wanders, naturally, as you continue. That's what folding does. It frees up just enough brain space for spiraling thoughts. You think about the laundry shop across the bridge, the one with that weird cat that stares like it knows too much. Or about the time a merchant dropped a whole pile of monogrammed fundoshi, loincloths, in the river by accident and they floated downstream like confused jellyfish. You chuckle under your breath. Life is weird. And laundry just makes it weirder. You're nearly done when your neighbor reappears, hands full of dried persimmons. She eyes the folded silk hari with visible relief. Didn't turn to pudding, I see, she jokes. You grin and hand it over, with the ceremonial it was no trouble shrug that every Edo resident learns by age 6. Of course it was trouble. You just don't say it. She hands you the persimmons in return, and you share one as the sun dips lower. Chewy, sweet, and just a little tart. A welcome treat after a day of scrubbing and hauling. She sits for a moment, pulling a needle from her sash and fixing a loose thread on her sleeve with the casual precision of someone who's done it 1,000 times. You talk about the weather, the neighbor's new baby, the temple festival coming up. Small talk, light and soothing. As she leaves, you gather your own repaired garments and put away your sewing kit. A small, rectangular wooden box filled with spools of dyed silk thread, bone needles, and a tiny pincushion shaped like a peach. The tools of your quiet magic. You pause at the fire pit, now just glowing coals. With the day's work done, you boil a little leftover rinse water for another purpose. Starch. Edo-era starch wasn't some fancy spray can. It was often made from rice water left to ferment lightly, creating a natural stiffener for collars, sleeves, and pleats. You pour it carefully into a ceramic bowl, dip the collar of your older sibling's kimono into it, and then hang it again to dry in the eaves. A few drops hit your sleeve and leave a strange texture, like stiff snow that refuses to melt. This little ritual is all about detail. Edo society was hyper-attentive to appearances. The way your kimono collar sat, whether crisp or crumpled, could say volumes about your discipline, household order, even your marriageability. Historians still debate how much of that was actual social judgment versus pure fashion anxiety. But either way, a sloppy hem could tank your rep. Outside, someone beats a drum, probably a peddler or one of the neighborhood kids pretending they're in a kabuki show. You finish your folding and put away the last item, a lovingly patched underrobe with a tiny stitched chrysanthemum at the hem. A touch only you know is there. With the room tidied and clothes stacked in their wooden chest, you finally sink back onto your cushion. Your arms are sore, your hands wrinkled, but there's a glow of completion humming in your chest. That quiet domestic triumph where no one claps, but you still feel like you earned a parade. And here's the thing they don't tell you. Edo Laundry Day isn't just about clothes. It's about rhythm. The pulse of repetition. The sound of water sloshing in the tub, the steady slap of fabric on wood, the creak of the drying pole as it sways in the wind. It's like a sleepy kind of music, soft and slow and just offbeat enough to be comforting. You stretch again, eyes half closed. Somewhere nearby, someone is starting a fire for dinner. The scent of miso and grilled fish drifts through the alley like an open invitation. You hear laughter, the rustle of neighbors winding down their own laundry chaos, and a squeaky cart will turning down a distant path. You'll eat soon. But for now, you just breathe. Just let your muscles melt into the tatami for a few rare, still minutes. Tomorrow, the laundry will dirty itself all over again. But tonight, it's clean. The air turns cool as evening slips its quiet fingers through the lattice windows. You light a small oil lamp and watch the soft flame wobble with your breath. There's something satisfying about this twilight hush. The laundry's folded, the house is still, and now you iron. Well, not iron like you'd know it today. No plug, no steam, no frantic sprints to find the cord before you fry your shirt. In Edo, Japan, you use a hinoshi, a heated metal tool, shaped like a round-bottomed scoop, typically filled with glowing charcoal or heated on a brazier. It's less of a chore and more like wielding a tiny, angry god. Handle with respect, or risk setting your sleeves on fire. You crouch low, resting the base on a flat wooden surface, and press the collar of your sibling's work kimono. Steam rises faintly as you run the tool along the edge, smoothing the fibers into submission. One slow pass, then another. There's a rhythm to it. Not unlike petting a cat that may or may not bite you. Most people in Edo didn't own a hinoshi. They'd go to a nearby machiwaya offering pressing services, where skilled women, sometimes even blind workers trained by touch, could fold, flatten, and shape silk like origami. Your neighbor used to do it for coin, before her eyesight started to go. Now she just critiques your technique. She once told you the difference between well-ironed and worn-out is a whisper-thin line. And she's right. You've seen samurai with crisp pleats that could slice tofu, and merchants whose over-ironed sleeves hang limp like tired noodles. Everyone pretends not to judge. But they all judge. You move on to your mother's festival kimono, dyed deep indigo with tiny white cranes in a rising pattern near the hem. It hasn't been worn in months, but she asked you to check it anyway. You lay it out like a sacred scroll, running your fingers along the collar, feeling for creases invisible to the eye. And there, beneath the left sleeve, a faint mark. Could be oil. Could be soy sauce. Could be curses. You mutter under your breath and grab a scrap cloth, dipping it in lukewarm water laced with rice bran soap. It's delicate work. Indigo is proud, but it can bleed if offended. You blot gently, whispering little prayers not to wreck the weave. The stain lifts, sort of. Mostly. Close enough that, in firelight, it looks like a shadow. You exhale. Crisis semi-averted. While your hands work, your ears pick up the low sounds of Edo winding down. Distant wooden clogs on packed earth. A baby wailing. A flute from the bathhouse across the canal. Somewhere, a dog barks at a ghost only it can see. You remember how onsen workers sometimes offered laundry services too, dunking your sweaty robes into hot mineral waters between scrubbing floors and managing bath tokens. Not common, but not rare either. Rumor has it certain high-ranking geisha had their clothes cleaned this way, by apprentices desperate to get close enough to absorb glamour by osmosis. Historians still argue whether these hot spring laundries were a formal part of the onsen trade or just a fringe benefit for the right kind of client. Either way, you don't have that luxury. Your hands, your soap, your elbow grease, that's your spa package. You pause to reheat the hinoshi, lifting the lid of the hibachi to expose the embers. A little puff of ash sneezes into the air, making you squint. You rotate the tool carefully, watching the metal warm to a low, reassuring glow. Then back to work. Smooth. Press. Fold. Stack. It's slow. Intimate. Kind of boring. But weirdly, grounding. You imagine your descendants one day using machines that press their clothes in seconds, with buttons that sing. You imagine them forgetting what it's like to burn your fingers or spend 10 minutes debating if a fold is too aggressive. You imagine them not caring whether their sleeves droop or hold shape. And a small, irrational part of you wants to time travel forward just to shake them by the shoulders. But for now, you iron. Because someone has to. The flame flickers as you finish the final pleat. You let the hinoshi rest, metal cooling on a slab of stone, while you place the newly pressed kimono back into its box. You adjust a lavender sachet, one of your own making, sewn from leftover cloth and filled with dried flowers to keep moths away. Not everyone uses them, but you like the ritual. Like tucking in the garment for a long, scented nap. You shut the lid gently. Outside, someone calls Ayasumi, good night. Another voice answers back, Oyasumi Nazai. It's that part of the evening where greetings get softer and lanterns start swinging from hooks on porches. You stretch again, your spine cracking in protest. You head outside with a basket of rags and soak them in the leftover rinse water. These aren't fancy garments, just cleaning cloths, dish wipes, and the mysterious square your uncle uses for polishing his sword but never lets anyone touch. They don't need pressing, just drying. You hang them on a low line, watching the silhouettes sway like ghost flags in the rising breeze. The moon peeks from behind a cloud. A fat one tonight. Full and bossy. As you re-enter the house, your foot nudges a clothespin that rolled off earlier. You pick it up, the wood warm from sitting near the lamp, and place it back in the basket with a strange, tiny sense of pride. Tomorrow, someone in your house will wear one of these clothes and go out into the world a little straighter, a little crisper, maybe a little luckier. And they'll never thank you. Which is fine. You wouldn't know what to do with thanks anyway. You dim the lamp and lean against the wall, exhaling slowly. The floor is cool under your legs. Somewhere nearby, someone starts to snore. And not gracefully. You smile. Laundry. Folded, pressed, and stored. Your part of the world is in order. At least until morning. Your knees are stiff from all the squatting, and your back hums with the dull ache of a day's worth of effort, but you're not done yet. Laundry isn't just about cleaning and pressing. In Edo-period Japan, you've still got the final act to carry out, the art of storing. This isn't just folding and shoving garments into the nearest hole in the wall. Oh no. Storage is strategy. It's quiet warfare against mold, insects, and the ever-looming threat of moisture, which can turn even your best silk into a tragic biology experiment. You slide open the osier, the recessed closet built into your home's wooden walls. Inside, you've cleared a spot, already laid with straw mats and cedar chips. You run a hand over the cloth-wrapped storage boxes, tachi, that hold your family's precious seasonal clothing. Each one is folded with care into paper sleeves, then wrapped again in cotton for good measure. There's a scent in there, rice starch, cedar, and the faintest trace of camphor, like the memory of a temple bell. Some people use dried persimmon peels to deter silverfish. Others swear by bundles of pine needles. You're a lavender and rice bran person. A little unorthodox, but it gets the job done and smells less like your grandmother's sock drawer. You rotate the clothing boxes according to the calendar. Out go the lingering summer yukata, which you'll fluff in the sun next year. In come the layered fall kimono, heavier, darker, and more serious, as if even your wardrobe knows it's time to start behaving. As you lift one of the lighter boxes, you pause, because, wait a minute. Is that a stain? You squint. It's faint. Almost a ghost mark, just beneath the collar of your older brother's festival robe. The last time he wore this, he definitely borrowed your sesame oil without asking. You told him not to splash it, and he swore he didn't. This smudge begs to differ. You set it aside for re-washing, muttering something less than polite. This is the rhythm. The laundry that got clean might get stained in storage. The pressed kimono might wrinkle if someone stacks it wrong. You could fold everything perfectly and still find creases in 6 months. Life's a loop, and clothing, like people, rarely behaves. Most Edo homes didn't have much space. Your osier shares real estate with spare bedding and boxes of seasonal knickknacks. If you're lucky, your family owns a tansu, a wooden chest of drawers used to store accessories, underclothes, or hand towels. These tansu were often custom-built, passed down like heirlooms, and sometimes bolted with hidden compartments. Not for treasure. For hairpins and tax ledgers. Same thing. You think of your aunt who once lost a whole juban, an under kimono, in a drawer for 2 years, only to find it wrapped around a mouse nest. Nobody ever lets her forget that. Not even the mouse, probably. Historians still debate whether storage methods in Edo were standardized or hyperlocalized. Some records suggest wealthy townsfolk had entire rooms just for textiles, guarded like miniature museums. Others believe commoners relied mostly on vertical storage, hanging garments from ceiling rafters to save floor space. You work with what you've got, a shelf, a box, a system that only you understand but somehow works. Mostly. Once everything is in place, you gently slide the closet door shut. A soft thunk, like sealing a time capsule. It won't open again until the wind shifts, the rains fade, and the air says, it's safe. Try again. You feel a flicker of satisfaction. It's not flashy, but this kind of order has its own quiet dignity. You glance at the clothes you wore during the wash, loose linen, a little rumpled now. You'll hang those to air out overnight. Edo homes don't have wardrobes or standing coat racks. You've strung a length of hemp rope across the corner of your room. It sags a little under the weight, but it holds. You hang your washing tunic and stretch the shoulders gently. It smells of starch and river wind. In a perfect world, you'd sleep now. But this isn't that world. There's still a last task, the wash tools. You step outside into the inky dark. The moon is high now, throwing shadows sharp enough to cut your toe on. You cross the yard to the edge of the well and begin rinsing the washboards, buckets, and cloth straining stones. Your hands are slow, but deliberate. Cold water numbs your fingertips, but it's honest work, cleaning the cleaners. You tip each bucket upside down to dry. Shake the clothespins into a cloth pouch. Wipe down the lid of the soap tin. It's all part of the ritual, this final cleanup. Neglect it, and you'll pay next wash day, when your tools smell like dead pond. You glance toward your neighbor's yard. A flicker of movement, probably her cat, or a spirit in the mood for laundry tips. You wave, just in case. You're not superstitious, but you also don't mess with ghosts who appreciate tidy linen. You gather everything and head back in, footsteps soft on the packed earth. One last look around. Lines empty. Soap stored. Boxes stacked. Done. Finally. You sit on the edge of your futon, letting your hair down, your fingers tracing the muscle memory of folding, scrubbing, sorting. The day was long. The clothes are clean. The house feels lighter. Laundry day in Edo. Not glamorous, not quick, but deeply human. A patchwork of motions and intentions stitched together with care and quiet repetition. As you pull your quilt over your knees, your eyes drift shut. In your sleep, you dream of sun-dried cotton and rivers that run clear. And somewhere in the dream, your brother still denies that oil stain. Morning arrives, soft and blue, filtering through the thin G panels that separate your sleeping space from the waking world. You open your eyes to the familiar scent of rice bran and cedarwood, a sort of olfactory applause for yesterday's labor. Laundry day is behind you, for now. But the story of clothes in Edo-period Japan doesn't end with washing and storage. Oh no. You stretch, sit up, and face the next chapter in this cotton and silk saga. Mending. That's right. Because in a world without fast fashion or H&M clearance racks, clothing was not disposable. It was patched, reinforced, sometimes even reversed. The phrase motenai, a kind of sacred what a waste, echoed through every home. If your sleeve tore, you didn't sigh and toss it. You rolled up your own sleeve, threaded a needle, and got to work. You reach for your little sewing box, a lacquered tray with thread spools in muted reds and indigos, a tomato-shaped pincushion, and your well-worn harabako, a needle case carved from bamboo. Some people keep little charms tucked inside. Yours holds a bent silver coin and a single white cat whisker. Don't ask. You light the stub of a candle and lean in. The garment in question. A pair of monpei, wide-legged work trousers belonging to your mother. The knees worn thin. You run your thumb over the fabric, soft as a well-loved book, and set about reinforcing it with a sturdy patch of sashiko stitching. Sashiko isn't just mending, it's meditation with a needle. You take pale thread and stitch rows of tiny running patterns into the cloth, strengthening the weak spots and creating something quietly beautiful. Little crosses, waves, diamond grids. Some families pass down their sashiko patterns like recipes. Others just make it up as they go, like jazz, but for knees. You hum a little tune as you work. It's the song your grandmother used to sing on cold mornings, one about a crane who sewed herself into human clothes. Morbid, really, but the rhythm is comforting. Historians still argue whether sashiko was purely functional or carried deeper spiritual meanings. Some think it was a coded language of love, each pattern a message, a hidden blessing stitched into the seams. Others think it was just the most efficient way to keep your rear from falling out of your trousers in public. You pause for tea, lifting a cup that's slightly chipped, just like everything else in your house. Imperfect, yes, but entirely serviceable. Quirky mending habits run in your family. Your uncle used to reinforce his undershirts with layers of old furoshiki wrapping cloths, so by the time you tried to fold his laundry, it was like handling origami armor. Your cousin once darned a hole in her obi with gold thread. She said it would confuse thieves. It mostly confused her own waistline. Your cat wanders over and promptly sits on the sewing pattern you're tracing. He does this every time. You suspect it's deliberate sabotage. You nudge him off, and he retaliates by knocking a spool of indigo thread under the futon. Classic. You retrieve it with a sigh and continue. Now, mending isn't just for emergencies. In Edo, Japan, clothing evolved. Garments were repurposed for changing seasons, aging family members, or shifting fashion. That old juban under kimono might be shortened for a child, or split at the seams to form a lighter summer robe. Nothing is wasted, not even sleeves. You've got a drawer full of lonely sleeves, just waiting for reincarnation. You remember a local merchant whose outer kimono was famously quilted from over a dozen different fabrics, some of which dated back 2 generations. Each swatch had a story: births, deaths, weddings, lost fortunes, accidental soy sauce spills. Wearing it was like walking through a family archive. Today, you're finishing the patch, reinforcing the corners with extra stitches. Not because they're necessary, but because it feels right. There's a moment where your needle catches the light, and it looks like a tiny lightning bolt dancing through the weave. You smile, absurdly proud. You hold the finished trousers up. Good as new, no, better. Stronger. Personalized. Touched by your own hands. In the modern world, you'd probably post a time-lapse video of this, complete with lo-fi beats and a slow zoom. But in Edo, there's no clout, no likes. Just that inner nod of satisfaction. As you fold the mended garment and place it gently on the storage shelf, you hear a thud from outside. You step out to investigate. A neighbor's laundry line has collapsed. Wet clothes are scattered across the ground like defeated warriors. You go to help, gathering robes and yukata with practiced hands. One of the garments has a loose hem. You mention it casually. Oh, that. I was hoping it would just fix itself. Your neighbor jokes. You both laugh, The way people do when they know they're going to be spending their evening with a needle and thimble whether they like it or not. You return home, fingers twitching from the memory of thread pulling through cloth. And even though you know you could spend the next hour relaxing, reading a scroll, or napping with the cat, you reach for another torn sleeve. Because mending, oddly enough, feels like breathing. It's patient, intentional, a whisper that says, not everything broken needs to be thrown away. And maybe that's the most Edo thing of all. The sun climbs lazily toward its midday perch, and with laundry drying neatly on the line and your mending stash tucked away, you move on to a different but equally vital frontier of Edo-period cleanliness, the shared world of neighborhood bathhouses. Now, don't get too excited. This isn't your glamorous onsen nestled in a misty mountain. This is your local sento, and it smells faintly of steam, mildew, and a dozen kinds of soap. But in the cozy way, like a familiar sweater you maybe shouldn't have left damp for that long. You wrap a clean towel around your shoulders, yes, freshly laundered, and make your way barefoot down the alley. The street is warm beneath your feet, the air filled with the clinks and clatters of daily life. Chickens shuffle past like judgmental old women. A baby screams somewhere, and someone else shouts about bean curds. It's chaos, but the kind you've grown fond of. The sento's entrance is split, of course. Men to the left, women to the right. No unisex spa vibes here, unless you're in one of those special rural places where everyone just throws modesty into the river. In the city, modesty is a complex dance. You step inside, the wooden floor creaking under your feet, and hand your coin to the old woman behind the counter. She doesn't look up. She never does. Now here's where it gets real. Before you can even think about soaking in the bath, you have to scrub. Like, scrub. You take your seat on a low stool, knee height, because Edo was not built for comfort, and begin your ablutions. There's a metal basin filled with warm water, a ladle for rinsing, and an absurdly scratchy washcloth that feels like exfoliating with sandpaper and bad decisions. You wash thoroughly. Armpits, behind the ears, even between your toes because yes, people notice. Your neighbor to the left is humming a tune and shaving his head. The one to the right is inspecting his feet like he's trying to read them like a book. And you're focused, methodical. Cleanliness, after all, is half social contract, half spiritual purification. Historians still argue whether Edo-period bathing was more about hygiene or ritual. Some say it was spiritual, cleansing the impurities of body and mind, a holdover from Shinto purification practices. Others point out that the city's packed layout and frequent fires made daily bathing a necessity, lest the entire neighborhood start to smell like boiled fish and despair. Here's your quirky tidbit. Certain bathhouses hired performers. Yep, you'd soak in the tub while a storyteller or shamisen player sat just outside, serenading your soapy transformation with tales of vengeance, fox spirits, or the occasional doomed romance. That's right. Bath time ASMR, 18th century style. You rinse off and step into the communal bath. The water is hot. Like, regret your life choices hot. You sink in slowly, trying not to squeal audibly. The man across from you raises an eyebrow. He's got the calm demeanor of someone who's been boiled alive every day for 50 years. You breathe out. The heat seeps into your bones. Muscles loosen, eyelids droop. You listen to the sound of water sloshing, of low murmurs and laughter, and for a moment, the chaos of the city feels very far away. And here's the thing. Laundry day doesn't end with the laundry. It ends here, in this shared human soup. You're clean now, head to toe, clothes to skin, and so is everyone else. The sento acts like a social equalizer. Samurai soak next to servants. Merchants gossip with messengers. No one wears status here, just sweat and steam. You spot a familiar face across the bath. It's the rice vendor who sold you that bad bag of mochi last week. You exchange the kind of nod that says, "We're not going to talk about that here." Because in the bathhouse, grudges dissolve like soap suds. Mostly. Now, let's not get too nostalgic. Bathhouses in Edo weren't always peaceful havens. There were rules. No splashing. No roughhousing. And definitely no bringing your own fermented pickles to snack on in the water. Someone always tried. You finish your soak and emerge half-poached but wholly refreshed. Wrapping your towel around your damp shoulders, you make your way to the dressing room. No mirrors, of course. Just a quick pat down and a mental note to recomb your hair when you get home. You dress slowly, savoring the way clean fabric feels against clean skin. There's something almost ceremonial about it, like you've pressed reset on your entire body. Outside, the city buzzes on. A woman balances a basket of radishes on her head. Children run past, chasing each other with what appear to be dead fish. You don't question it. Back home, you find your laundry dry and crisp, fluttering on the line like little white flags. You smile. The sun has done its part. The bathhouse has done its part. And you're spotless. The best part. Tonight, when you slide into your futon and pull that fresh, mended quilt over your shoulders, you'll smell faint traces of cedarwood, rice soap, and sunlight. And you'll feel like a brand new human. Until next laundry day, anyway. Back from the Sento and wrapped in a breeze-kissed robe that still holds the scent of midday sun, you gather your laundry, now dry, crisp, and faintly stiff, and begin what might be the most delicate part of the process. Folding, storing, and avoiding the wrath of a moth with a taste for hemp. You sit cross-legged on the wooden floorboards, careful to brush off any dust or loose hair that's drifted in during the day. The first piece in your lap is a plain white underrobe. It's got a tiny snag at the hem, but otherwise, it's soft, clean, and still a little warm from the sun. You smooth it flat with your palm, fingers trailing over the weave like you're petting an obedient pet cat. Not that your actual cat is ever obedient. It's probably outside right now, trying to steal sardines from a fishmonger who knows your face and will definitely come knocking. Folding is a serious ritual in Edo-period households. There's a method to it. Everything has to be symmetrical, fitted just so, like cloth origami. It's not just about neatness, it's about space. You live in a narrow home with sliding doors that judge you silently if anything looks cluttered. And God forbid your neighbor peeks in while your sleeves are misaligned. You fold the outer kimono with care, lining up the seams, tucking in the collar. This garment may only be for errands and the occasional tea with a gossip-prone aunt, but it still deserves reverence. The process slows you down. It forces you into a rhythm. Fold, press, flip, fold again, almost like a dance choreographed for people with strong forearms and no time to waste. Now for the storage part. You slide open a low wooden drawer, its interior lined with mulberry paper scented faintly with dried citrus peel. Not for aesthetic purposes, mind you. That's moth repellent. A poor man's cedar. Some families even hid bits of tobacco leaf or old pine needles in little cloth sachets tucked between layers of clothing, an early version of Grandma's lavender drawer fresheners, only spicier and slightly carcinogenic. Historians still argue whether moth infestations were considered the homeowner's fault or just bad luck. One camp insists that regular folding and airing out garments was a moral duty, a reflection of household discipline. Another argues that even the most diligent homemakers lost garments to the cloth-chewing demons of humidity and darkness. Probably both, if we're being honest. And here's a bizarre but true nugget. Some Edo period samurai folded their formal wear while reciting poetry. That's right. They'd sit in silence, carefully arranging ceremonial hakama, whispering waka poems about impermanence and plum blossoms. Folding was like origami plus existential dread. You try it once, but halfway through a haiku about dew and death, you forget how to fold sleeves and give up with a sigh. There's a rhythmic pleasure in this part of laundry day. Everything slows down. No more clanging buckets or boiling pots. Just soft fabric, rustling paper, and your own heartbeat in the quiet house. Occasionally, you hear a neighbor sneeze or a crow caw from the rooftop. But otherwise, it's just you and your linens. You fold a pair of tabi socks next. Well, more roll than fold, because folding socks is for people with infinite time and very tiny hands. You stack them like fat dumplings in a little cloth bag, muttering a quick prayer that you'll find both halves again next week. Mismatched tabi are an unforgivable faux pas, on par with forgetting to bow or accidentally offering someone your left hand. Now, you reach for your most delicate piece. The underlayer you wore to that spring festival, the one with the pale pink embroidery that always makes you feel a little more refined than you are. It's been sun-bleached in places, and the thread is loosening at the seams, but still, it's yours. You run your thumb over the embroidery, wondering idly whether the seamstress who stitched it is still alive. Textiles in Edo carry memory like tree rings. You fold it slower than the rest, as though extra gentleness might stall time. And maybe, for a moment, it does. Because even in a city bursting with fires, frogs, and the occasional curfew-violating flute player, there's space for stillness here. By now, the folded stack looks like a miniature city skyline. Neatly pressed kimono towers. Obi belts curled like cobbled roads. Sock dumplings tucked in like sleeping dogs. You slip them into their drawers or roll them into fabric bundles tied with string. Some go into wooden storage chests that smell like history and regret. Others are slotted into cubbies behind sliding screens painted with cranes or the occasional angry-looking wave. You leave one outfit out for tomorrow. Simple, breathable, easy to move in. You hang it from a bamboo pole near your futon, where it'll air out overnight. That's a trick you picked up from your grandmother, who always claimed ghosts wouldn't mess with your dreams if they saw your clothes were ready for tomorrow. Logical? No. Comforting? Absolutely. There's one final step. You grab the broom and sweep under the laundry line. Loose threads, damp leaves, the occasional suicidal beetle, it all gets scooped up and tossed out into the alley. The chickens will take care of the rest. And now, as the light shifts toward evening and shadows lengthen across your tatami floor, you feel complete. Like a puzzle snapped into place. Your clothes are clean, folded, stored. Your body is fresh. Your home smells like soap, sunshine, and cedar paper. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls. Maybe a temple. Maybe just your neighbor banging on a pot because he's lost track of time again. Laundry day in Edo doesn't end with folding. It ends with peace. A kind of soft satisfaction that seeps into your bones. And tomorrow, you'll wake up and put on clothes touched by wind and warmed by sun, knowing they've been cared for by your own hands. The fire in the hearth has died down to a gentle flicker now, casting long, golden shadows across the tatami mats. The air smells faintly of scorched rice, wet cloth, and wood smoke, honest scents that hang like the final notes of a shamisen song. You've folded and sorted the last of the laundry. Your arms ache in a quiet, satisfying way. And now, you sit back. This is the unscheduled part of the day. The time when no one expects much from you. Not your neighbors, not the household gods, not even yourself. It's just you and your thoughts, which, after a day of hauling water, scrubbing grime, and stretching damp sleeves over bamboo, are mercifully soft and slow. You sip warm barley tea. Its roasted flavor lingers on your tongue like the last good story of the night. You glance down at your hands, pink and wrinkled from the wash. They look older than they did this morning, more like your mother's, who taught you how to beat cloth on river stones and whistle while doing it. There's a small basket nearby. It's filled with mended garments that didn't survive the day unscathed. That one sleeve tore again, and a sock wore through at the heel. You'll get to it tomorrow, maybe. Tonight, it's enough just to notice it. To bear witness to the ongoing battle between fabric and friction. A low thump sounds from the neighbor's side. Someone just plopped a futon down. You hear a faint laugh, maybe a bit of shamisen music. The entire neighborhood is winding down. Even the chickens have stopped clucking. That one rooster, always confused, is silent for once. You've spent most of today in a humble, repetitive task, one that the history books rarely mention. But here's the thing, in Edo, Japan, this rhythm of labor and rest was what defined most lives. The Tokugawa government might obsess over class hierarchy, land tax, and poetry contests, but none of that gets your socks clean. Historians still debate whether laundry was truly considered women's work or simply delegated by practicality. Official documents hardly mention it, but household manuals and illustrations suggest it was deeply interwoven into everyday life, passed on through gestures, not proclamations. Kind of like the best recipes or family stories. You think back to that one time, years ago, when you tried to dry clothes on a rainy day. You strung them over the cooking fire, hoping the smoke would do the trick. It didn't. Everything ended up smelling like burnt fish. You laugh softly to yourself now. Lesson learned. Outside, a frog croaks once, and the breeze pushes gently through the paper screens. Someone burns incense to ward off mosquitoes, and the faint curl of sandalwood floats into your room. The smell is nostalgic and slightly medicinal, just enough to remind you of childhood. You stretch your legs and lie back on the tatami, feeling the coolness seep through your kimono. The ceiling beams above are darkened with years of smoke, a kind of domestic stardust. If you lived in a merchant household, this would be the time your father tallied the day's sales. If you were samurai, you might be reviewing a dull manual on Confucian virtue. But you cleaned the lint out of collar seams, shook out the futon cover, and remembered to retrieve every last clothespin. Well, almost every one. And you've earned this pause. In a world without electric dryers or synthetic detergent, this kind of clean takes skill. There's no lavender-scented marketing here. Just ash water, and effort. And still, your sleeves are soft and your bedding fresh. That counts for something. Do you hear that? A nightjar, maybe. Or someone 2 doors down snoring like a tiny earthquake. Either way, the world is moving on without you for a bit, and that's okay. You've done enough. A small paper lantern flickers beside you, throwing warm patterns on the wall. Your eyes follow the glow, drifting upward, downward, until they don't feel like following anything anymore. Let it all fall away, the splashes, the wrung-out sleeves, the way your fingers turn to prunes in the rinse tub. For tonight, there's no more laundry, no more dripping ropes of cloth. Just the hush of a well-earned stillness, and the softness of a tatami mat at the end of a long, sudsy day. Your eyelids flutter just a little. You're not asleep yet, but you're definitely not upright either. Still, there's one more thing to do before you truly let go of the day. The ashes from the cooking fire have cooled enough, and now they're ready to be scooped into the laundry jar. Tomorrow, or maybe the day after that, You'll stir them into water to make your next batch of lye. So you get up, knees cracking like old floorboards, and pad quietly toward the hearth. A small wooden scoop rests on the ledge. It's smooth from years of use, worn down to the exact shape of usefulness. You gather the soft grey ash, dry, powdery, and strangely beautiful in the way forgotten things often are. The lye jar sits tucked in the corner like a shy neighbor. You lift the lid and sprinkle the new ash over the old batch, already soaked in water and slowly transforming into a primitive, slippery soap. You give it a gentle stir. The mixture is murky, alkaline, and not exactly inviting, but it gets the job done. No fancy branding required. Just ash, water, time, and trust. Historians still argue whether Edo-period households consistently used ash lye, or if wealthier homes had access to imported soap from China or the Dutch. The records are fuzzy. But for most commoners, the secret ingredient was right underfoot, left behind by last night's meal. You can't help but appreciate the quiet poetry of that. What burns down becomes what washes clean. You return the scoop and wipe your hands on your apron, which has just enough life left in it for one more day's labor. The moonlight sneaks through the washy paper windows, silvering everything it touches. Outside, someone rustles around, probably retrieving a cloth they forgot on the line. It happens. Back in your corner, you pull the curtain closed, not for privacy exactly, but for comfort. You light one more stick of incense, letting the scent of dried orange peel and clove lull the room into something softer. Even the tatami seems to sigh with you. And now comes one of the best parts of laundry day, slipping between freshly aired sheets. You pat the futon flat, fluff the little buckwheat pillow, and ease yourself down. The fabric smells of sun. Not the warm beachy kind from tropical postcards, but the subtle woody aroma of cedar-scented daylight and outdoor air. A smell you never notice in the moment but always remember once it's gone. You pull the futon quilt over your shoulders. It's a bit lumpy. Your patch job from last spring is holding, sort of, but the cotton is warm and the weight is perfect. A gentle pressure against your chest, like the world saying, "Okay, you're done now." You think about the women at the river earlier. The ones who cracked jokes about your clumsy folding and shared pickled plums from an old bento box. You can still taste the sharp tang on your tongue. You meant to thank them properly, but everyone got distracted when someone's sock floated away and started a minor rescue mission. Classic. You wonder how their wash turned out. Whether they beat the stains out of that one ceremonial robe. Whether the mother with the sick baby got home in time for feeding. Whether anyone else stepped in soap-slippery mud and cursed under their breath, like you did. There's something comforting about knowing your struggle was shared. That laundry, mundane as it is, connects you to people across alleys, across seasons, even across centuries. That sock you just mended. Someone 150 years from now might do the same thing, muttering at a stubborn hole and threading a needle under poor light. And now that your body is sinking into the bedding, your thoughts drift further. You picture the old washerwomen in the countryside, stooped, strong, and smiling with toothless grins. They've seen 1,000 suns rise over soaked linen. They know the rhythm of the river better than most poets know haiku structure. You imagine them sitting beside their steaming cauldrons, stirring pots of cloth like witches casting practical, lemon-scented spells. One of them probably uses persimmon juice to bleach whites. It works, believe it or not, though you always found the smell a bit too fruity. You breathe in. You breathe out. The air is still. You're still. A small, sleepy part of your brain reminds you about tomorrow's list. More washing, a few mends, and maybe, if the gods are kind, a break long enough to sit by the river again, feet in the water, sharing gossip and rice cakes with the women who've become your midweek kin. But that's tomorrow's thought. Right now, you're just a bundle of blankets and weary limbs, warm from the day's work and drifting steadily toward rest. The smell of fresh cloth is wrapped around you like a lullaby. The rhythm of folding, washing, wringing, it's still echoing in your arms. You did good today. No parade, no poetry, just clean sheets and quiet pride. You close your eyes. And somewhere, not far from here, another hearth is cooling. Another jar of ash sits waiting. And another tired soul like you, maybe in a house just 2 alleys down, is curling into bed, skin smelling faintly of smoke and sun, dreaming of soap bubbles and river stones. Sleep doesn't come all at once. It tiptoes in, like a cat, not quite ready to settle. You turn over, tuck your knees in a little tighter, and let your mind wander again, not forward, but back. Because laundry in Edo-period Japan wasn't just an isolated act, it was stitched into the entire rhythm of life, from how you dressed to how you lived to, yes, even how you died. Take funerals, for instance. You've seen the way a deceased person's final garments are washed, folded, and tied with care. The dead are dressed in simple white robes, shinishoku, folded left over right, the opposite of how the living wear them. There's something haunting about that last wash. You don't do it often, but when you have, you couldn't help but move slower, as if the cloth itself deserved a moment of silence. And for babies, the first garments they ever wear are hand-stitched and hand-washed, often by a grandmother who whispers blessings into the rinse water. The baby clothes hang like miniature flags from the line, flapping against a sky so wide it makes you dizzy. You've washed a few of those too. Some were for your own. Some weren't. Laundry follows you from first breath to last, whether you're ready or not. And let's not forget about love. Ah, yes. That scandalous kimono you once scrubbed, stained with a bit of makeup and an unmistakable dab of men's cologne. You didn't ask questions. Just wrung it out like it was any other Wednesday. But oh, the imagination wandered. Still does, now and then. There's a superstition that washing clothes after dark invites bad luck, or worse, ghosts. But that doesn't stop you sometimes. Especially when the baby won't sleep or you're avoiding a conversation you don't want to have. You keep it quiet, just the soft slap of cloth against wood, and pretend the night can't see you. Historians still argue whether this belief came from older Shinto purity laws or from more practical concerns, like avoiding damp mildew in clothes that couldn't dry properly by morning. Either way, there's something undeniably eerie about the way shadows cling to a half-dried kosode fluttering in the wind at midnight. You smile to yourself. Because of course, there are laundry ghost stories. Of course there are. There's the tale of the Ubume, the spirit of a woman who died in childbirth, appearing at night to wash baby clothes by the river, crying softly. Some say she's harmless, just grieving. Others say she steals your clean linen if you leave it out overnight. Either way, no one wants to be the last one hanging things up at dusk. And then there's the mysterious Shiroyona, the woman in white. Always freshly washed, always damp around the sleeves. People say she appears during foggy evenings, asking for help folding a sheet that has no end. Don't help her, they say, or she'll fold you into the fabric. Laundry is practical, sure, but like everything else in this strange, beautiful country, it's also wrapped in story and belief. You've heard neighbors swear that folding clothes while angry traps bad spirits in the pleats. You can't say you believe it, but you've also refolded a yukata once or twice after cooling down. Then again, sometimes laundry just is. A hot summer day, the smell of rice and miso in the air, your sleeves rolled up and your feet bare on the wet stone floor. A moment suspended in quiet usefulness. You scrub. You rinse. You squeeze. You hang. And somewhere in the repetition, you stop worrying about your aching shoulder or the gossip from 2 doors down. You just move. It's not meditation exactly, but it's close. There's a phrase you heard once, the dignity of the daily. You didn't fully understand it until that day you tore your only good tabi socks and spent an hour mending the holes. No one saw. No one clapped. But somehow, when you slipped your feet in and they held, snug, warm, whole, you felt a flicker of victory. Laundry isn't glamorous. It's never going to be carved into a temple wall or chanted in a court poem. But it's the thing you do again and again, not because it's special, but because it matters. You remember your grandmother, bent over a wooden washboard, humming that same 3-note tune over and over. No lyrics. Just rhythm. You swore you'd never turn into her. And yet, here you are, humming it without realizing. Funny how that works. You shift under the quilt again, letting the memory of old voices mix with the smell of last season's cedar sachet tucked under the futon. Your room is silent, save for the occasional creak from the neighbor's house, or the wind nudging at the shutters. All the world is soft-edged and wrapped in cloth. You imagine a future where someone discovers your old drying rack, splintered, patched, held together with love and too much twine. They'll wonder what kind of person you were. Whether you laughed when the soap splashed into your eye. Whether you let your clothes wrinkle or folded them with precision. They won't know. But maybe, just maybe, they'll breathe in a bit of that ghost sun smell and feel something familiar. Something that lingers in the threads. Because in Edo-period Japan, the laundry wasn't just done. It was lived. And just like that, the season changes. You blink and the air feels different, lighter, maybe, but also more demanding. The rainy season, or tsuyu, has arrived, and with it, your entire routine turns upside down. Nothing dries. Nothing smells right. Nothing listens. You wake to grey skies and a heavy, wet breath seeping into your paper walls. The buckets outside are full, the water barrels overflowing. You know what this means. Today's laundry is not your own, it's your entire household's war against mildew. You light the fire earlier than usual, trying to chase off the creeping damp. The coals crackle sluggishly, like even they can't be bothered. And as the steam rises from the boiling water, you realize that everything, every single cloth, will have to be wrung out harder, rinsed longer, and watched like a hawk. One bad fold and the whole hem will sour by morning. Still, you get to it. There's a rhythm to rainy season laundering, a kind of slow ballet between what can be done and what must wait. You stagger your loads. You double up your starch. And instead of the wide outdoor lines, you lean into the bamboo rods hung from the ceiling, indoor drying poles, just low enough to bonk your forehead if you're not careful. Which you're not. Not at first. Thud. You curse softly. Not quite PG-13, but close. The ceiling clothesline isn't just practical, it's practically sacred during this season. In fact, there's a whole niche practice around it. You hang the heavier items near the fire pit so the rising heat encourages evaporation, but you have to be careful not to scorch the fabrics. Historians still argue whether Edo households had standardized indoor drying spaces or if they adapted on the fly. Either way, you've mastered your little system. One rod for yukata, another for undergarments, and a special perch for your employer's fancy sash that must never wrinkle. Ever. Again. And let's not forget the power of kaya, those big mosquito nets. During tsuyu, some clever households double them as drying tents. You've done it before, spread the net, hang the garments inside, and let the low fire do the rest. It traps both warmth and mosquitoes, So really, win-win. Except for the time you accidentally hung a fermented tofu cloth inside. The smell lingered for days. Even the neighbor's cat stopped visiting. It's not just the wet that's the problem, it's the humidity. The way it clings to your neck and seeps into the folded corners of your sleeves. You start checking the underarms of every kimono like a paranoid seamstress. Because once that mildew sets in, the fabric clouds over like rice gone bad. You keep little pouches of charcoal in the drawers now. You learned that trick from the old apothecary 2 doors down. Keeps moisture out, and weird smells too. A sprinkle of dried yuzu peel doesn't hurt either. The scent is sharp enough to make you feel briefly cleaner than you are. But even when the rain stretches on for days, you don't give up. You find moments of calm, like when a lull between showers lets you dash outside and hang a few things for half an hour. You know the sun's a liar, it won't last, but you use it anyway. You've even made a sport out of it. You hang your apprentice's leggings on the line and race the clouds. If I win, you cook dinner, you tell them. If you win, I cook. They always pretend to lose, but the rice still comes out better when they do it. Of course, there's always someone who goes full experimental. Last year, that one eccentric neighbor started drying her laundry over pots of simmering sake, claiming the alcohol vapor preserved the colors. You tried it once. The robe smelled amazing, but your boss did ask why you reeked like a pub. You blame it on seasonal allergens. Despite the mess, there's something comforting about this routine. The way the house smells like soap, smoke, and damp cotton. The familiar creak of bamboo rods underweight. The soft plink-plink of water dripping from cuffs and collars onto the floor below. Laundry becomes a game of patience and balance. You shift things an inch to the left. You rotate a damp sleeve. You sigh and start the whole thing over because the sash is still wet in one stupid spot. But amid all this fuss, you catch something beautiful. A sleeve hanging just right in the firelight. A pattern coming back to life as it dries. That moment when the air finally feels dry enough to trust. And then, it happens. The rain stops. Not just for an hour, but for a whole morning. The clouds break open like a cracked egg, and golden sunlight spills across the tatami. You don't waste time. You fly into action, snatching garments off the poles and out onto the porch like a general leading a charge. Lines go up. Pins click shut. And suddenly, the world smells like steam and sunlight and victory. That's when you know you've made it through the worst of Tsuyu. You survived mildew season. Your yukata survived mildew season. Even the fermented tofu cloth survived. Barely. You take a breath, warm and wide. There's a bird singing somewhere. The baby next door is finally not crying. For once, even the laundry is quiet. You sit down beside it, legs crossed, sleeves rolled, and let yourself be proud. Not because the work is done. It never really is. But because for a moment, everything is hanging just right. You wake earlier than usual today. Not because someone shook you or called your name, but because the light is just that different, clearer, calmer. There's no birdsong, oddly, but the wind has that special summer breath to it, the kind that brushes the nape of your neck and says, "Hey, wash your futon." And you don't even argue. It's a dry day after a week of relentless rain, and everyone around you knows what that means. The whole street is alive with flapping, snapping, waving cloth. Yukata sleeves stretch like lazy flags, futons hang like enormous tofu slabs, and someone's underthings are being scandalously optimistic in the breeze. You grin. Laundry in the Edo summer isn't just a task, it's a declaration. Of freshness. Of resilience. Of the simple fact that you have things to wash, and a place to dry them. And maybe even someone who notices when they smell nice. Or not. Still, you've got your own laundry game plan. The futon comes first, of course. It's bulky and bossy and threatens to knock over the water bucket when you drag it outside. You wrestle it over the wooden pole strung across the ingawa, the veranda, and beat it with a futon tataki, a flat paddle made just for this very moment. Each whack echoes like a drumbeat across the neighborhood. You can hear other paddles answering from nearby homes, a rhythm of shared domestic pride. It's a public ritual, almost celebratory. And it helps you imagine that every dusty puff flying off into the air is one less sneeze waiting to ambush you at night. The kimonos come next. Lighter now, since it's too hot for layering. You take care with the cotton ones. Soft, patterned, familiar. They remind you of street festivals and lantern-lit walks. Even though you're just pinning them to the line, they still flutter like they remember dancing. Summer starch is a thing now. Rice water again, but thinner. You need the garments to hold their shape, but you don't want to feel like you're wearing origami in the heat. So, you rinse and wring with more care than usual. A little less stiffness, a little more swing. One garment slips from your fingers and lands in the dirt. You sigh dramatically, look both ways, and decide to call it pre-aging. Then you rinse it again, because come on, you're not a monster. Historians still argue whether Edo households used soap regularly during summer laundry, or if they leaned more on scrubbing with ash, salt, and elbow grease. You've probably used all three, depending on your mood and what was left in the pantry. Meanwhile, a neighbor's child keeps running under your drying lines, giggling every time they bump into a damp sleeve. You threaten them with a water ladle. They giggle more. It's a losing battle, but it's nice to hear laughter in the heat. Your boss has handed over silk underrobe for special care. You blink at it like it's a live animal. Silk in this weather. Seriously. You're half convinced it'll melt. But you take it inside, hand wash it gently in cool water with grated soaproot, and dry it flat in the shade, whispering soothing words to it like you're calming a baby fox. Outside, the heat climbs. The street turns into a mosaic of shadows and color. Indigo. Rust red. Ecru. Every hue dances on the clotheslines, shimmering with leftover moisture. The smell is divine, a mix of cotton, heat, soap, and time. There should be a word for that smell. You decide it's clean o'clock. You pause to sip barley tea. It's cold and roasted, and it makes your spine shiver pleasantly. You let your gaze drift down the row of drying garments. There's something deeply satisfying about this visual, like a catalogue of your life, rendered in threads. You've been doing laundry long enough now that your hands have developed a muscle memory. They tie knots without thinking, know just how much pressure to squeeze with. But every so often, you catch yourself staring at a hemline or sleeve pattern, lost in the detail. It's in those quiet moments that your mind wanders. You wonder who washed the clothes of samurai. Did they have special laundresses? Did they starch their armor straps? Did they complain about rain like the rest of us? You recall a story, possibly apocryphal, about a daimyo who insisted on having his undergarments sun-dried on sacred ground. Supposedly, it made them immune to failure. You laugh. Your boss can't even keep tea stains off his hari. Still, the myth stays with you. Laundry as a kind of spiritual preparation. A purification rite. A way to align yourself with the seasons, the weather, the turning world. And now, the sun is beginning to soften. The heat dips just enough that you're not sweating behind your knees anymore. You start collecting the dry garments, folding them with crisp corners and soft patience. Each piece hums with sun warmth. The futon is last. It's heavy and awkward and smells like sunshine and eucalyptus. Okay, not actual eucalyptus. Just that sharp green scent of clean fibers aired out after a week of gloom. You lift it in your arms like a prize and carry it back to its place. You already know your sleep tonight will be better, deeper. No damp. No sneezes. No ghosts of old dust bunnies lurking beneath your dreams. As you close the sliding door and step back onto the cool floorboards, you take one last look at the empty laundry lines. And you feel it. That quiet peace. The moment when the work is done, and nothing more is expected of you. Just the low buzz of evening, the smell of soap on your fingers, and the slow ease of a job well done. Slowly now, the evening shadows stretch and soften like a blanket being pulled up to your chin. The last of the sunlight filters through paper shoji screens, casting gentle patterns on the tatami floor where you sit, feet tucked beneath you. The day's labor, the beating, rinsing again, wringing and hanging, has left your hands faintly pink and fragrant with soap and rice water. It's a familiar feeling, a small ache mixed with quiet satisfaction. You trace your fingers over the smooth wooden paddle that's been your trusty futon beater all day, remembering how its flat surface absorbed the rhythmic thumps that sent dust and dander airborne in tiny clouds. It's almost meditative, that beating. Like drumming out all the worries and stale air, making space for the clean and the calm. You wonder, as you often do, if the same could be said about the neighborhood kids' incessant giggling and darting through the drying laundry, scattering your carefully pinned kimonos. Probably not. Outside, cicadas begin their evening chorus, a buzzing symphony that feels like the city itself is exhaling. The scent of dried grass mingles with faint incense from nearby shrines, blending with the subtle smell of your sun-dried clothes. This fragrance, part earth, part soap, part warmth, feels like a lullaby in itself, wrapping you in the embrace of the present moment. You think about the countless generations before you who have done exactly this same ritual, in houses both grand and humble, from the bustling streets of Edo to quiet mountain villages. Historians still debate how far the use of rice water in laundry truly extended. But here in your corner of the world, it's as common and comforting as a well-worn kimono. As your thoughts drift, you can't help but chuckle softly to yourself. Laundry day might be boring in the grand historical chronicles. No battles, no royal intrigue, but it's rich in its own way. It's the story of daily life, resilience, and care. Of ordinary people quietly making their worlds a little fresher, a little brighter, one piece of clothing at a time. The night deepens. You stretch out on your freshly laundered futon, feeling the crispness beneath your back. Your eyelids grow heavy, the peaceful smells and soft sounds inviting you to rest. Tonight, you won't just fall asleep. You'll drift, cradled by the gentle history of 1,000 laundry days before yours. If you enjoyed this gentle journey into Edo-period laundry day, please like the video and subscribe for more soothing stories that help you unwind. Feel free to share where you're watching from and your local time in the comments. I'd love to know. Sweet dreams.